The impossible convergence. What are the chances? A physician from 15th century France, a blind rural woman in Bulgaria, an American lensman prone to trances, a woman accused of sorcery in England, an Irish cleric from the Middle Ages. 5 distinct individuals, 5 nations, 5 separate centuries. They never encountered one another. None of them accessed the other's prophecies. They lived and died without knowing of each other's existence. Yet, their perceptions aligned perfectly. When their prophecies are juxtaposed, when their pronouncements are translated into a unified tongue, when the allegories are stripped away to reveal the bare essence of their foresight, they all indicate the same destination, the very moment we are experiencing now. Welcome. Draw the curtains. Dim the lights. This is Prophecy in Conversation. Tonight, we embark on an endeavor no one has truly attempted before. We won't merely discuss individual prophecies. We will bring 5 seers into a single dialogue. 5 intellects separated by hundreds of years, conversing as if seated at the same table, observing the identical horizon, responding to the same impending tempest. But before you delve deeper, before this narrative fully captivates you, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who shares your passion for enigmas. Trust me, once the disparate elements begin to coalesce, you might not wish to pause. And if you appreciate the content we provide here in Prophecy in Conversation, consider becoming a channel member. Your support genuinely enables us to continue researching, composing, and crafting more profound stories such as this one. Now, ponder this query. What if prophecy isn't about foretelling? What if prophecy is about recollection? Because if one person predicts the future, it might be mere chance. If 2 people foresee the same event, it could still be coincidence. But when 5 individuals, separated by centuries, depict the identical sequence of events for the same era, you are no longer observing randomness. You are witnessing a pattern. 5 names, 5 keys, 1 portal, and we are on the verge of opening it. Let's commence with the figure you already recognize, the physician of the plague. The man history both regards with apprehension and cannot disregard, Nostradamus. Michel de Nostradame existed amidst pervasive death. Not figurative death, but actual mortality. Entire thoroughfares hushed, complete families obliterated. The very air was a source of dread. The Black Death transcended mere illness. It was a profound psychological scar etched into humanity. He tended to the afflicted when many medical practitioners fled. He entered homes where no one else dared to tread. He witnessed cities transform into vast burial grounds. And somewhere within that constant proximity to mortality, an internal transformation occurred. He began to perceive future events, not precisely dreams nor hallucinations, but more akin to sudden insights. Impressions he later endeavored to encapsulate within obscure quatrains. He deliberately concealed them. He encoded them not to appear enigmatic, but to ensure his survival, as openly prophesying the future in his time could lead to execution. For the epoch we are approaching, roughly the mid-2020s, Nostradamus outlines a cascading reaction, not a singular cataclysm, but a sequence resembling dominoes. First arise what he metaphorically terms the red wind, a contagion that spreads not through contact, but through the atmosphere we inhale. People retreat indoors, windows are sealed, cities fall silent, and an invisible yet ubiquitous fear takes hold. Then he describes an ocean of metallic machines resting beneath the waves, eyes glowing within the dark waters. A war that remains undeclared. A conflict without an official commencement, where vessels disappear without explanation and adversaries are never seen. Pause for a moment and tell me in the comments. Do you believe future conflicts will even be announced? Or will they already be in progress before the world becomes aware? Nostradamus then speaks of something even more disquieting than disease or warfare. A person, a leader he calls the Smiling One. Not a conqueror leading armies, but a compelling orator, a diplomat, someone welcomed, someone trusted, someone humanity willingly selects. He records that people will embrace this individual, believing they are opting for peace, without realizing they are surrendering their freedom. After this comes ecological devastation, the scorched earth, heat beyond living memory, shrinking rivers, droughts turning communities against each other, survival redefining morality, and finally the heavens. Fire descending, a second light in the sky, a celestial occurrence moving too swiftly for humanity to halt. 5 events, not random, but unfolding sequentially. If Nostradamus had been the sole prophet, we could dismiss him, as history often does. But this is where the narrative loses its comfort, because 400 years later, in a secluded mountain village far away, a blind woman depicted almost the same sequence. Her name was Baba Vanga, and what she witnessed makes this convergence impossible to disregard. Baba Vanga never asserted any special status. That is the first detail witnesses consistently reiterated about her. She did not behave like someone seeking adherence, power, or notoriety. In fact, for most of her life, she inhabited a very modest, unremarkable home in the mountains, surrounded by simple furnishings and a continuous queue of visitors waiting outside her door. Farmers, soldiers, grieving parents, politicians, even intelligence operatives all stood in the same line, all anticipating the same thing: answers. Vangelia Pandiva Gustarova lost her vision as a child after a violent storm reportedly swept her up and cast her into a field. Sand entered her eyes, followed by infection. When the bandages were removed, she could no longer perceive the physical world, but she insisted something else had become accessible. She described it not as images before her eyes, but as mental impressions, like information arriving fully formed. People would sit before her, and before they uttered a word, she would describe specifics about their lives. She possessed knowledge she could not possibly have known, names of relatives, events that had transpired in secret, illnesses doctors had not yet diagnosed. Many departed feeling more terrified than comforted, because her predictions were not always benign. Word spread gradually at first, and then uncontrollably. During the Cold War, both Eastern Bloc authorities and foreign intelligence agencies documented her predictions. That singular detail should give you pause. Governments rarely concern themselves with mystics unless something compels them to. She reportedly foretold the demise of prominent political figures, nuclear catastrophes, and the sinking of a submarine years before these events transpired. Skeptics argue that interpretations were retrospectively applied. Believers insist the documentation existed beforehand, and the debate remains unsettled. But what is crucial for our narrative is not the flawless accuracy of every prediction. What matters is what she revealed about our present era. For the years encompassing 2024 to 2026, Baba Vanga described escalating natural calamities, not one single catastrophic event, but multiple, overlapping ones. Earthquakes altering geographical contours, extreme weather becoming anomalous rather than seasonal, economic instability spreading across continents. She spoke of Europe facing profound upheaval and nations struggling internally more than with external forces. Then she depicted a conflict in the East that would expand beyond regional boundaries. Not a conventional war initially, but something that progressively grows, drawing in more participants. And this is where it becomes eerie. She spoke of armaments humanity had never previously employed. Not merely more destructive weapons, but fundamentally different ones. Technologies that would transform the conduct of warfare. Weapons that operate without the traditional presence of human soldiers. Recall Nostradamus and the Sea of Iron. The machines beneath the water? 2 individuals separated by centuries, describing a form of warfare where humans are not the direct combatants. Tell me honestly in the comments, does modern warfare already resemble this? But Baba Vanga's most disturbing vision was not war. It was a leader. She warned of a figure emerging during instability who would present himself as a unifier, someone who would assuage tensions, diminish conflict, and bring nations together, a peacemaker. People would quickly place their trust in him because he would articulate precisely what the world longed to hear: security, stability, and protection. Yet, she insisted this peace would be temporary and deceptive. Nostradamus called him the seducer. Baba Vanga called him the false savior. 2 different vocabularies, the same ominous warning. She also cautioned about diseases not arising from natural origins, illnesses influenced or engineered by human intervention, outbreaks linked to human actions rather than purely environmental factors. Again, compare that with Nostradamus's red wind, a plague carried invisibly through the air. You can dismiss one prediction. You can dismiss 2. But at what point does dismissal cease to be rational and begin to be avoidance? Before we proceed to the next prophet, pause and reflect on something deeper. Both Nostradamus and Baba Vanga were surrounded by suffering throughout their lives: war, disease, fear. Yet neither predicted a singular, instantaneous apocalypse. They described a transition, a period of instability rather than a definitive ending, almost like a threshold. Write below in the comments what you think. Are we currently living in a normal epoch of history, or at a pivotal turning point? Because the third voice in this convergence did not derive from conscious visions. It came from sleep, and his predictions were documented verbatim while he was entirely unconscious. His name was Edgar Cayce, and his descriptions link the very earth to what lies ahead. We are about to delve deeper. Edgar Cayce never intended to become a prophet. He was not raised amidst mysticism or occult traditions. He was not a clergyman, a scholar, or a philosopher. He was a photographer from Kentucky, a quiet man who led an ordinary life and considered himself profoundly religious in a very conventional sense. In fact, if someone had told him as a young adult that people across the globe would one day scrutinize his words, he probably would have found it amusing. His story began with a predicament. He lost his voice. For months, he could barely speak above a whisper, and medical doctors could identify no physical cause. Desperate, he consented to try hypnosis, not to foretell the future, but simply to elucidate his own illness. While under hypnosis, something unforeseen occurred. Instead of responding normally, he began to diagnose himself using intricate medical terminology he had never studied. He detailed the cause of his condition and even proposed a course of treatment. When he awakened, he recalled nothing, but the treatment proved effective. Word spread, and people inquired if he could do the same for them. He hesitated. He was uncomfortable with the attention and worried it conflicted with his faith. Yet, he eventually agreed to assist. And over the subsequent 40 years, thousands of sessions were recorded. During each session, he would recline, enter a trance-like sleep, and begin speaking while a secretary meticulously transcribed every word. More than 14,000 readings were documented. Doctors examined some of his medical diagnoses and found many to be remarkably accurate despite his lack of training. But hidden among those readings was something entirely different. Descriptions not of illness, but of humanity's future. And this is where he aligns with Nostradamus and Baba Vanga. Cayce repeatedly spoke about transformations to the Earth itself, not merely climate change as we conceive of it, but a fundamental shift in the planet's equilibrium. He depicted the poles moving, regions that were once cold becoming warm and warm regions becoming cold, coastlines changing, some land masses submerging while others rose. For decades, people dismissed this as fanciful. But in recent years, scientists have documented the magnetic North Pole accelerating its movement faster than at any previously recorded time, drifting from Canada towards Siberia. Not a complete planetary inversion, but movement nonetheless. Cayce maintained that these physical changes would not transpire arbitrarily. They would be preceded by signs, specifically disturbances connected to the sun. Now pause. Nostradamus warned of extreme heat and a second light in the sky. Baba Vanga spoke of the sun behaving unusually. Cayce spoke of solar indicators preceding Earth changes. Three distinct sources, separated by centuries, all pointing skyward. He also described widespread seismic events and coastal inundation, occurrences that would not be isolated but interconnected. A change in one region would trigger another. He cautioned that humanity would initially interpret these events politically, blaming nations and adversaries, before recognizing that the underlying cause was grander than any single country. But his most haunting assertion was not geological. It was psychological. Cayce stated that before these Earth changes, humanity would experience moral disarray. People would seek direction and desperately desire leadership. In times of uncertainty, he explained, societies naturally gravitate toward figures who promise clarity and security. And he issued a warning almost identical to the others. He said, many would follow a leader believing he brought light, but they must be careful because the one appearing to bring salvation could bring the greatest darkness. Nostradamus's seducer, Baba Vanga's false savior, Cayce's bringer of darkness disguised as light. Three independent warnings about the same type of figure. At this juncture, the convergence ceases to appear coincidental and begins to resemble a pattern of repetition, almost as if history is preparing for a recurring human behavior rather than a singular event. Before we proceed, consider this and share your opinion in the comments. Why do so many prophecies focus not just on disasters, but on human decisions? Are these predictions about destiny or about psychology? Because the next prophet lived centuries before even Nostradamus, a woman feared in her own time, a woman people believed could be executed simply for speaking. And her description of the sky may be the most chilling of them all. Her name was Mother Shipton, and her words sound less like a prophecy and more like a warning we consistently fail to heed. Long before newspapers, long before electricity, long before humanity comprehended planets or galaxies, there lived in Yorkshire, England, a woman people approached with an equal measure of curiosity and apprehension. Her name was Ursula Soundheil. History remembers her as Mother Shipton. She was born in the late 15th century inside a cave near the River Nit. And from the moment she entered the world, tales enveloped her. People recounted strange storms during her birth, unnatural sounds in the night, and a presence that unnerved villagers who had never even met her. Whether those stories were factual or purely superstitious, one truth is undeniable. She matured in an era where inexplicable knowledge was fraught with danger, extreme danger. This was a period where mere suspicion could result in the loss of a life. Accusations of witchcraft were not symbolic, they were lethal. And yet, despite that peril, people still traveled great distances to hear her speak because she consistently uttered things she should not have known. Unlike Nostradamus, who composed cryptic quatrains, Mother Shipton articulated her insights in rhymes and verses that ordinary people could easily recall. Farmers repeated her words in taverns, and travelers carried them to other towns. Her prophecies disseminated orally long before they were ever transcribed, and that made them more difficult to control or erase. She described conveyances moving without horses centuries before engines came into existence. She spoke of human beings soaring through the heavens like birds long before flight was technologically possible. She mentioned messages traveling instantaneously across the world, an idea utterly impossible to a medieval society where a letter might take months to arrive. But those specific predictions alone are not why she belongs in this convergence. It is what she conveyed about our present epoch. Mother Shipton wrote that when ships navigate beneath the sea and humans regularly traverse the skies, the world will enter a period of profound turmoil. She warned of conflict spreading across nations and societies turning against themselves. She depicted confusion not merely in political terms, but morally. People uncertain about truth and unsure who to place their trust in. Then she spoke of the celestial sphere. She described a dragon of fire crossing the sky multiple times, not a star seen once, and not a comet glimpsed fleetingly, but a repeating celestial sign that would terrify humanity. People would gaze upward and comprehend that events on Earth were linked to something originating beyond Earth. Now think carefully. Nostradamus wrote of fire descending from the sky, along with a second radiant entity. Baba Vanga foresaw peculiar solar activity. Edgar Cayce spoke of solar phenomena preceding global shifts. Mother Shipton envisioned an incandescent body traversing the firmament, for distinct seers, all pointing to the celestial sphere. Yet, her foretelling didn't foresee complete annihilation. She didn't claim humankind would disappear. Instead, she indicated that a reduced population would endure and reconstruct. She talked about a profound shift, not an eradication, a challenging transition leading to an altered planet. This specific point is crucial because a genuine apocalypse signals history's conclusion. What she depicted was a reinitialization. Furthermore, she issued another caution. Throughout this era, societal structures people depended on would falter. Locations once reassuring would become desolate, and individuals guided by established customs would experience profound disorientation. Take a moment here to share candidly in the comments. Do you perceive society as gaining clarity or descending into greater bewilderment? Mother Shipton's prophecies resonate not merely with catastrophic events, but also with how humans behave amidst turmoil. She grasped that disorder doesn't commence with seismic tremors or tempests. It starts when individuals can no longer concur on reality. And this brings us to the ultimate prophet, not a spiritual medium, not a speaker in altered states, not a local oracle, but a monastic figure. His foresight didn't detail natural catastrophes or cosmic phenomena. He enumerated leaders successively for nearly a millennium. And based on his accounts, we might already be experiencing the concluding phase. He was known as Saint Malachi. His particular prediction serves as the unifying thread for all the others. During the 12th century, well before the advent of contemporary science and long before telescopes unveiled the cosmos's vastness, an Irish cloistered man named Malachi of Armagh journeyed to the Eternal City. He wasn't recognized for prophetic gifts. Rather, he was esteemed for his discipline, piety, and pragmatism, an advocate for reform within the ecclesiastical hierarchy. No aspect of his renown implied a mystical bent. Nevertheless, on that pilgrimage, he encountered something he subsequently found difficult to articulate. He recounted experiencing a series of insights, not concerning calamities, not regarding meteorological conditions, nor even about countries, but specifically about pontiffs. In succession, a lineage of ecclesiastical heads extending far beyond his own lifespan. For every pontiff, he inscribed a concise Latin saying, an emblematic phrase that would somehow correspond to a future pope's persona, birthplace, or pivotal occasion. He offered a total of 112 such characterizations. Initially, academics disregarded the manuscript as inconsequential. After all, forecasting one leader could be mere chance, and foreseeing two might be open to interpretation. However, as eras unfolded, scrutinizers observed an unsettling consistency. The expressions persistently corresponded. A pope associated with mariners bore a phrase linked to maritime travel. A pontiff connected to celestial obscurations had a dictum related to the solar body. A pope affiliated with a specific monastic brotherhood possessed an emblem consistent with that order. Gradually, what appeared arbitrary started to seem methodically arranged. The ultimate description, number 112, stood apart. Its symbolism differed from the rest. It didn't just allude to a family crest or a place of birth. Instead, it outlined an epoch, a period of severe hardship for both the church and the global community. It spoke of a concluding spiritual guide leading humanity amidst turmoil, succeeded by divine reckoning and the eventual demise of the city built on seven eminences, Rome. For extended periods, many held that this entry pertained to the immediate past pontiff of our era. Upon his death, onlookers monitored intently, anticipating the cessation of the enumeration at that point. Yet, an unforeseen event transpired. A new pontiff was chosen, and abruptly, the foretelling appeared either invalidated or misinterpreted. If the succession had ceased, why did ecclesiastical governance persist? If the ultimate characterization had already unfolded, why did history proceed? That juncture lends itself to two interpretations. The initial one is straightforward. The prediction was erroneous. Possibly, ancient texts were subsequently re-evaluated to align with contemporary occurrences. Perhaps humanity perceived order where none inherently resided. However, the alternative scenario is what forges a link between Malachi and the other foreseers. What if the concluding record didn't pinpoint one person? What if it detailed an entire span of time? Re-examine the recurring motif. Nostradamus, Baba Vanga, Casey, and Mother Shipton did not forecast a singular calamitous day. They delineated an epoch, a passage marked by discord, bewilderment, ecological flux, and a quest for guidance. Malachi's culminating entry similarly portrays a period of hardship rather than a singular, exact happening. Stated differently, his foresight might not have concluded, it may have merely commenced. Now, consider the wider confluence. 5 individuals, spanning a millennium and disparate regions, articulated congruent motifs. Not identical phrasing, not plagiarized notions, but recurrent ideas. Ecological disturbances, irregular combat, societal disarray, astronomical omens, and humanity investing faith in a formidable leader amidst ambiguity. The truly astonishing aspect isn't their foretelling of misfortune. Every era anticipates calamity. The extraordinary element lies in the structural resemblance. Their prophecies unfold in a progression akin to chapters within a shared narrative. And here, I urge you to engage in genuine contemplation rather than emotional response. This presentation isn't asserting that the future is predetermined. If prophecy holds any significance, it might serve as an admonition rather than a predetermined timeline. An admonition is offered so that conduct can be altered. A prediction, conversely, implies that actions cannot be changed. Therefore, consider this. What if these insights weren't detailing inescapable occurrences, but rather consistent human tendencies? Historically, societies facing duress consolidate authority. Apprehension compels individuals to exchange liberty for safety. Perplexity renders assurance appealing, even when illusory. Perhaps the deceptive figure they cautioned against isn't a particular individual as of yet. Perhaps it represents a function that manifests whenever people grow sufficiently desperate to embrace it. And perhaps the cosmic indicators aren't punitive measures, but rather acknowledgments that mankind isn't master of all things. Furthermore, perhaps the existential predicament they outlined isn't a disintegration of faith, but rather the dissolution of unquestioning conviction, compelling individuals to contemplate, scrutinize, and deliberately ascertain their values. Before you exit this presentation, please articulate your personal viewpoint in the comments section. Do you perceive these foretellings as mere happenstance, metaphorical representations, or genuine admonitions? I review your insights, and this channel thrives as much from your dialogues as from the content itself. If this video prompted even a slight shift in your perspective, please consider liking and sharing it. This assists the discourse in reaching audiences who typically don't delve into such topics. And should you wish to bolster the channel further, a super thanks is also an option. This directly funds the investigative work underpinning each narrative. You'll also spot the hype feature. Engaging with it signals to the platform that this subject holds importance and aids in disseminating the video to more inquisitive intellects. Within this interwoven domain, we do not encourage alarm. We urge observation. Notice recurring configurations. Attentively consider pledges. Examine historical developments as they continue to manifest. For whether these five seers were mystics, analysts of the human condition, or simply chroniclers of cyclical occurrences, they conveyed a singular, collective insight. Cognizance modifies results. The future is not a predetermined destination awaiting our arrival. It is a path we are collectively treading into. Until our subsequent investigation, remain vigilant, maintain your inquisitiveness, and bear in mind that occasionally, the most profound linkages are those spanning centuries.